Welcome to the farm. I'm Lauren, my husband Eddie and I are dairy farmers, and when you have cows, you also have poop. Did you know that dairy cows poop about 15 times per day? That adds up to about 62 kilograms per day, or 10% of their total body weight. Yes, I'm talking about you. No need to be ashamed. You give us great milk. What do we do with all that poop, and how do we get it out of our barn? We're gonna tell you.
This video is sponsored by Major Dairy AI Services Limited.
We have a 3-row sand-bedded freestall barn. In the first maybe 60 feet of our barn is straw pack for a close-out dry cow pen and a calving pen. We have an automatic manure system that runs the length of the barn. It's a GEA Houle manure scraper system that Eddie will tell you a little bit more about later. And we pick our straw pack and throw the manure into the scrape alley so that the automatic manure scrapers will pick up that straw manure and bring it to the end of the barn. We do that to keep the pack fresh and clean, and calves are being born in that pack pen, so we don't want calves to be born on a nice fresh patty of manure. Then the manure scrapers will continue past the straw pack and run through the length of the free stalls, and then it drops in through grates at the end of the barn into a tube, so to speak, that goes into the pipe that blows into the manure tank. There are a couple areas in the barn that the manure scrapers cannot reach, like the crossovers where cows will cross through one section of stalls to the other, and those we need to scrape by hand. We scrape them into the scrape alley so that the manure scrapers can pick up the manure. The other spots are in front of the robot. We need to scrape those by hand into where the manure scrapers will pick it up. And also there's a section in our fetch area that we need to scrape the manure by hand, but those are minimal spaces and the manure scrapers do the rest. If you asked a modern dairy cow how they spend their day, they would probably say something like this. Well, I have a big long rest, and then I get up and I poop, and then I stand around for a while, and then I poop again, and then I go to the robot to get milked, and then I poop some more. Then I go eat a whole bunch, then I poop again before I go lay down, and repeat times 3 times per day.
So to handle our manure on the farm, we have a GEA Manure System. So it's a piston pump. This is an agitator that agitates the manure that's in a pit under the concrete that I'm standing on. There's a pit about 10 feet deep and then 10 feet wide and 10 feet long. When the pit gets to be a certain height, it triggers the agitator to go. The agitator kicks in. I think it runs for about 5 minutes. It's on a timer. It shuts off. Then about 5 seconds later, the piston pump starts. So this pumps all the manure about 400 feet to our manure pit that is out by the heifer barn. So this piston pump will run, it'll pull up, which will suck the manure up this pipe, and then when the piston pump goes back down, it pushes the manure through this pipe, through this hose, down this pipe, and this pipe goes about 12 feet down and under the foundation of the barn and 400 feet away. So we are pumping our sand manure 400 feet, which I'm not sure if I would say that that's the best system. I don't think it is the best system. I don't like moving parts with sand, but it does seem to work well. It was just the way we had to put our manure pit 400 feet away. It had to be close to the heifer barn to dump the heifer manure in. It couldn't really be behind the dairy barn because it was going to be too close to the river. We couldn't have it in front of the barn because it had to be a certain distance away from the houses that are across the road. So we decided to put it close to the heifer barn, which I like better because we're dumping about 8 buckets of heifer scrape alley manure into that manure pit every day. So honestly, I didn't want to drive that manure across our yard where we walk, the milk truck drives, feed trucks drive. I didn't want 8 buckets of manure to come around the new barn dumping into a manure pit that was close to the dairy barn. It just kind of worked to do it like this, but I'm not saying it's the best system, but it does work for us and it has worked well. Then there is an air line that you use. We have an air compressor over here. So this air compressor fills this tank with air, and then we have a tank outside that's way bigger, right there. So that's a tank that's certified for pressurized air. And what you need is a certain amount of pressurized air for every foot of pipe that you have for the manure. So with the company, Conestoga Agri, the guy that deals with the manure equipment, Chris, me and him talked about the length of pipe. We figured out how much pressurized air we need, the volume of air that we needed to pump that manure. And then we went like 50% over just to really cover ourselves to clean that pipe out so that we know that it gets cleaned out every time we open this valve up to blast it out with air. The reason you want that underground pipe to be cleaned out is the sand can settle in that pipe over time and eventually it will plug. So every day we blast it out with air, and then that air compressor runs for about 25 minutes, fills the tanks back up with air, and then you do it again the next day. So we have alley scrapers. The alley scrapers get pulled with cable. We have cable that's wrapped with rope. It's supposed to last a very long time. And this is the spool that it goes on, or the drum that it goes on. And this chain pulls that spool and pulls these alley scrapers. It pulls the plow to the end, and it's about as simple as it looks. It's just cable wrapped around a drum. There's a motor on it, and it turns it. So that's on a timer. Our scrapers run 9 times a day, I believe. It used to run 8 times a day. About a month ago, I added another time in the morning because I felt like it needed it. So it runs 9 times a day. So we're gonna close this guillotine valve. We're gonna blast this out with air. We open these valves and it's gonna shoot all this pressurized air to the manure pit. We've talked about doing this for years. We have no idea what it looks like on the pit side because nobody's ever stood there when I blasted this out with air, but I can tell you in the summertime, when there's a lot of birds in that pit looking for bugs, if I blast this out with air and I run out this door to look, all the birds go flying out of the pit. So we're kind of curious as to how this is gonna look. So I'm gonna set my phone up in here on the tripod. Lauren's gonna go out there. She's gonna call me when she's ready, and we're gonna show you.
I am running out to the, well, I'm trying to run, but the snow's kind of deep. There we go, got a track. To the manure pit. I'll show you, that's the end of the barn. So we've got the whole length of the barn, and the pit is there. It's getting closer. Okay, I made it. I didn't quite ask him where I should film, but I can see where there's fresh manure, so that's where I'm gonna be. There's the pit. There's the barn. I'm gonna give Eddie a thumbs up. Here we go. Whoa! Wow. Listen to that bubbling. That is nasty. Well, friends, let me tell you, that smells about as bad as I imagine you could think it smells. That was nasty, just nasty. You gotta watch this video. Yeah. Oh, that smelled so bad. No, it didn't go all over me. It smelled like I was sitting inside of a cow's butthole though. As I was standing on the edge of the ramp to the pit, I just could hear like snow kind of breaking. I was like, oh, am I standing a little too close to the edge? And then it just blasted. And Eddie was like, oh man, if the wind was a bit in the wrong direction, you could have just been sprayed with that, which I hadn't thought of, but I did check after to see if there were like manure bits all in the snow, and there wasn't, so I did get lucky that it's a still day.